Daniel Levy is the president of the U.S. Middle East Project and a former Israeli peace negotiator under Prime Ministers Yitzhak Rabin and Ehud Barak. I spoke with him on Friday about how this deal came to be and the political conversations he says need to happen next. Daniel Levy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Rosie.
What is your assessment of this hostage deal and how it came to be?
Well, I think it's quite interesting, actually, once one delves into it. And I think many media outlets have, and I've been speaking to some of those involved, also with some of the families, also with some of the mediators. This deal, something really very similar, was available several weeks ago. Actually, before the Israeli ground invasion into Gaza. And so one asks the question, why now and not then? And the sense is that the dynamic that shifted here was the pressure inside Israel on the Israeli government, primarily from the families, to prioritize this possibility of a release over the immediate continuation of the military mission. So, yeah, clearly it's a difficult deal to reach. To say there's a absence of trust between the parties would take even British understatement a step too far. Yeah. But you've had, really quite effective Qatari mediation. Yeah. I think towards the end, you had the Americans leaning in. You've had the Israeli head of the intelligence agency, Mossad, in Doha, Qatar, on several occasions. Qatar has demonstrated, actually, that by maintaining these relations with Hamas, this could be brought into play. It was useful. Egypt, the neighboring country where they came out, has played a role. But crucially, the pressure inside Israel. There were some remarkable scenes of shouting matches between members of the family and right-wing members of the Netanyahu coalition over whether to prioritize the release or not. And now we have seen the families reunited. We've, of course, seen Palestinian women and adolescents released from Israeli prisons. We've seen the pause, and we're seeing the humanitarian assistance ramping up and going in.
Both sides obviously say that the pause is temporary, but I wonder, and that they will go back to where they were after this pause. I wonder whether you think that that is the case, whether it is possible to go back to where they left the fight, and whether that's the right thing for them to be messaging to the world as well.
This is, in this tiny glimmer of light, this is that big, nasty cloud very imminently on the horizon, because it does seem that there is a strong Israeli commitment to resume the military action, the bombardment in Gaza. We have seen the degree of devastation, destruction, death. These numbers are hard to comprehend. First, you had the horrors of October 7th, and now you've had the Israeli killing of 14,500 Palestinians, close to 6,000 children. But the intention is, unfortunately, to carry on. And that shouldn't be as simple as I fear it will be. I think there needs to be much more external effort to push to extend this and to try and lock in a permanent ceasefire, including via further rounds of prisoner release. Because what we do now have is a proof of concept that you can negotiate to get the Israelis out. You can negotiate with Hamas. You can have a cessation. But Israel apparently is not ready to drop what I think most experts look at this and say is an unachievable goal of the eradication of Hamas. And you need to carry on what is being done militarily into a political realm. But you don't have the buy-in for that yet. And that's what needs to be built. And the Americans are going to have to do a lot more heavy lifting, and they're not there yet, unfortunately.
And why do you say that that's not achievable to eradicate Hamas? Is it because it is a way of thinking as opposed to a group of individuals? What do you mean by that?
So Hamas, as an armed resistance movement, And the very notion of resistance will continue unless and until Palestinian rights are realized. And that's why we need politics to take the place of military, because Israelis won't have security. And of course, neither will Palestinians until that core of the conflict is resolved. Hamas is a political movement, it's an armed resistance, and it's an idea. And you're not going to eradicate that. You're not even going to eradicate the entirety of the military wing either. Because I think what we've seen is so much death with a not staggering result on the Israeli side.
Given your experience negotiating with Palestinians, do you think the Israeli government and Israelis, people who live there, are ready to go to that negotiating table and have that political resolution? Because it doesn't feel like we're very close to that on the Israeli side, or either side, frankly, either side.
Well, I think that's right, Rosie, and I would draw a couple of distinctions here. First of all, let's be very clear. This Israeli government, this Israeli leadership has categorically rejected, long before October 7th, since the government was formed, any political negotiations, any recognition of there being a Palestinian state. They thought they could skate over this and just have normalization with Arab countries. And I don't think we've been paying enough attention to how extreme that government is. Secondly, the broader public. I think we should not be surprised after what has happened, the shock and the disruption of those events, that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance among Israelis. No desire to sit and talk with Palestinians, lots of anger, of course. But I think many Israelis are saying to themselves, there has to be another way. And they're saying to themselves, is some of the extremism on our side part of the problem? That polarization still exists. And thirdly, crucially, what is the outside environment that one creates in which Israelis and Palestinians are operating? Do Israelis see that the international community says everything's okay, we will never hold you accountable, we will create totally the wrong incentive and disincentive structures? Or do Israelis actually realize that there's a choice to make, that occupation is not cost-free, and can Palestinians have a leadership that unites and comes to the table? So I think that external wrapping is very critical in answering the question of what will Israelis think? Because if the external wrapping looks like one thing, it's easier for them to avoid the choice than if it looks like another.